the reticular activating system, something that filters out what your subconscious believes to be important to it. Let's say you get a red Mercedes tomorrow. Next thing you know, you'll notice every single red Mercedes on the road.
Yeah.
That new car, whatever you just got, you start to see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Why? Because now it's become of importance to you. All data points are all coming in at the same time. If we didn't have our RAS, or the reticular activating system, we would go crazy, ballistic, because there's just way too much data coming in. So it filters out what's important to us. So the more you start to trigger and remind yourself what's important, the more you'll start to see through that lens. If you start to trigger yourself to see opportunity and abundance, you start to see that more in the world. You go around the world with that lens versus the lens of scarcity, the lens of undeservingness, unworthiness. So yeah, that's a big one.
Wow. Hey guys, Ozzy here. This is one of my all-time favorite episodes. Andrew is what you could call an abundance expert. So me, being a small podcaster, sometimes I feel unworthy of people's attention. When I'm sitting in rooms with millionaires or celebrities, I feel like this imposter syndrome. In this episode, he walks me through exactly how to create an abundance mindset, how to feel worthy of making money, how to feel worthy of having a big podcast, how to use faith in God to put yourself on an even playing field with homeless people, with celebrities, with millionaires. It is truly one of the most valuable episodes, and I hope you enjoy watching. Dang, she's ruthless, bro.
Dude, she's cutthroat.
Where are you already going? Oh, you're recording.
Yeah, we're recording.
Live here.
Welcome back to the show, Respectfully Inspired with Aussie Films. Today, I'm here with Andrew Gonzalez. He is the head of media at Everbowl. He is an entrepreneur. He's worked with people such as Ed Milet, David Meltzer, and
Mr. Fencer himself.
Mr. Jeff Fenster, the owner of Everbowl himself. So, Andrew is a legend. I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself in any areas I miss.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. It's been a pleasure being able to meet you and, the entire circle of just young entrepreneurs that you just surround yourself with, and the creators. It's really cool to see what you guys are doing. But yeah, I'm Andrew. I've been in media for probably closer to 10 years now, getting onto it. But it's been a crazy journey, just a lot of ups and downs, lefts and rights, and this world of media and social media has been evolving like crazy, but it's been fun. But I'm just an ordinary dude.
Yeah.
Really, in the end of the day.
It does feel, sometimes when I interview older guests, I'm like, I don't feel like I have imposter syndrome, because I know I do it all the time, and it does feel like it's my identity, but sometimes when you interview older people, I'm like, I don't know how the vibe is going to feel. Because I think there's just, naturally, when you go younger to older, there's just some, you're not at this level of wisdom I'm at, which is true. So it's sometimes it feels more serious or hard to get to a state where I feel comfortable, but you're such a open, loving person. I just feel like I can be myself, which is good, because I know it's going to create a better product.
Yeah.
Before we dive too deep into it, I want to start every episode off with my why behind the podcast, which is that I want to inspire people to invest in soul wealth. So the way I explain that is that most people measure success by wealth metrics, which are money, possessions, achievements, and or status. And the goal of my podcast is to change the way people measure success to relationships and memories. Something I always say is that when people post anything, whether if it's a podcast, a song, a vlog, a YouTube video, most people hit the post button and then they're waiting to find out if they're successful. Based on how many likes, based on how many streams, they'll decide if it was a success. They're waiting for the metrics. And I always say, by the time I hit the post button, I'm successful. If this is a good memory for you, and if this relationship lasts, then that's a success, and
Absolutely.
Everything else is a bonus. But let's start with a quote that you said is, people can either have a job, a career, or a calling. Can you explain what the difference is?
Yeah. So, it started with me first learning that. For instance, I went through 12 jobs before I even got into media or even made it. It was just a hobby before that. But it was always dead-end jobs. I started working my junior year in high school because I remember asking my parents, like, I had just got my license, and I was like asking, like, how much you guys got saved for my car? And they just started busting up, and like
they're laughing.
They're laughing. They're like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "If you want a car, you got to work for it." I was like, "All right, well, I guess I'm getting a job." And a couple weeks later, got a job, first job my junior year, and started to last. College was never really a path for me, or at least it didn't seem like one for me. And so I just went into the working field. I was working in construction, warehouses, UPS, like you name it, anything I could do. But I always had this underlying, like, walking in, this dreadful feeling of walking into work and just like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, this is not what is, like, this is not the path. This is not it. I'm not going to wake up for the rest of my life and this be it for the next 30 years. Like, there's no way. Like, there's got to be something better. And so that showed me what a job really was there. I think a career is something that you can make money from, that you use your natural ability, gifts, and talents and leverage them into what you're doing to be able to make a living. Which is also a great thing. That's when I got into media. I started realizing that this hobby of me and my friends snowboarding, filming them with a GoPro, turned into an actual business where I could make money from it. Like, people were offering to pay me to go do these same videos with a little GoPro and iMovie. And once you get to the calling, though, I think the calling is something only you've given the power to have done or to do. It's your unique shape. It's the way you inspire, the story that you have, the tribulations you went through, and how you can use that in service of other people is the calling side, where I think you really start to get into it.
Interesting. So you said you have a mission to help 100 million people achieve their dreams. What would that even look like? How is that even possible?
You know what? That mission, actually, I had a podcast a few years ago, and it was called The Road to 100 Million. And that mission was created after working for David Meltzer. He has a mission to empower over 1 billion people to be happy, right? And he's like, if I can just get 1,000 people to empower another 1,000 people to empower another 1,000, 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million, 1 million times 1,000 is 1 billion. He mathematically was able to backtrack how he could impact over 1 billion people to be happy. And I just thought that was one of the coolest things. And for him, it was his North Star. It was what he wanted to do. And for me, when I left and pursued the insurance industry with Ed Miley, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
When I went and left to go pursue the insurance industry with Milet, that's when I created this mission. And I told David, I actually wrote him in a letter when I left too, that I'm leaving because I want to go be able to be inspire. I want to be one of your 1,000 and be able to go inspire another 1,000 to inspire another 1,000. And so for me, the road to 100 million was, pretty simple. It was just the doubling of numbers, how I could get backtrack from all the way to 100 million lives. But the main thing there was the actual language behind it was to impact, which means to actually have an impact on someone, to change their life in some way, to impact 100 million lives, to achieve, to actually get what they want, their dreams, right? So it was very, intentional with the wording too. Was I want to be able to go, and it's not just like, let's make 100 million dreams come true. It's like, I want to help people to be able to achieve their dreams, to get them to a place where they can do it themselves.
Well, you're helping me. You're a part of my journey, so that's one, and hopefully I can extend that branch. I'm curious.
Doing it all on your own already, man.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate that. How did he take that letter when you sent it to him?
It was basically after the last 2 weeks of working with him. It was my last day there. And him and I had a sit down meeting, kind of like an exit interview kind of thing. And I actually had a canvas that I printed out for him. He has he has this poem that he had on his wall since he was a little kid. It was called the Don't Quit poem.
Yeah.
And it basically, one time during a training, he went through every single line of the poem and broke it down for us.
Yeah.
And it's just all this stuff about just not quitting. Like when it seems so far, it's actually very near, and all this other kind of stuff. And I surprised him with the gift of the canvas and the letter at the same time.
Yeah.
And, he read it, and we just had a great talk about.
What was the canvas?
It was just a framed canvas of the Don't Quit poem.
Oh, of the Don't Quit poem.
Yeah. So the poem was printed onto it. And so, so I just gave him that, gave him the letter, and our talk was just based around the inspirations of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get in front of the camera. I wanted to speak. I wanted to go on stages. I wanted to consult and mentor people and change lives. And,
wow.
It was just such a cool thing where he was just like very supportive about the entire thing. He always was just like, dude, he would coach me on the things that I needed coaching on.
Yeah.
And from there would just be like, just keep doing those things and you're going to make it. I see it in you. Because I knew you weren't going to stay here forever doing what you're doing.
Interesting. Well, that leads me to another question, which is, right now you're under Jeff Fenster doing all the media for him. Mm-hmm. But you quit David so that you could kind of, it sounds like, build your own empire. Mm-hmm. What is the plan for that? Like, are you going to build with Jeff so that you can become a speaker alongside Jeff? Or is this just like another David Meltzer, like another stop in the road till...
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I work off of a framework of making the most out of three things: my gifts, my resources, and my opportunities. Yeah. And so once I had to figure out that resource, the reason I left the insurance industry, it was not by choice. It was really willed out. We had like half of our team quit on us in a single day. Yeah. And me and my roommate couldn't even afford rent at that point. I had even sold my car to pay for another 30 days so that I could try to rebuild the business. Couldn't build it in time, and ended up having to move back home at 26. Started all over again, trying to figure out like, okay, let's start from the ground up. Let's start from the basics. What am I good at? Right? What resources do I have? What people do I know? What opportunities can I create? Yeah. And that's when the media side came to it. But all that stuff is still part of the dream. It's just the way I kind of look at it right now is the skills that I'm using and developing right now. I'm mastering a craft. Yeah. Like, I mean, you know this a little bit on the distribution side of a podcast, right? It's a lot that goes into it. Building a brand is a lot that goes into it. Building funnels, back-end systems, like all the technical side of what goes into personal branding, along with the ideation and how to storytell and transfer a message. And I mean, this looks like a stepping stone to get to that eventually, whenever that is. Yeah. I mean, I've been able to speak on stages through insurance. I got to speak in front of 1,200 people following John Gordon on stage.
Wow, that's crazy.
That was probably one of the most nerve-wracking things I had ever done. Yeah. But I loved it. I wanted it, and I got it, and I got to experience it. And it was one of the best things I've ever experienced, and I want to do more of that for the rest of my life. But I think right now what I'm focused on is mastering my craft.
Well, the reason I find it interesting, that dynamic, is because like I'm building my brand, the Soul Wealth brand, and I have this whole map of everything it can become. Right now, the podcast is the main distributor of the message. I've been vlogging for 5 years, so that's another distributor of the message. I write on LinkedIn. But in my ideal world, Soul Wealth is not like Aussie Films. Right now, they're 2-in-1 because I'm the only person who runs it. I work for it. Right. In the ideal world, Soul Wealth, I think that the best entrepreneurs create a solution to their own problem. My own problem was that I was obsessed with work in a bad way. So it's like my dream was always to be a YouTuber. So then, I would neglect relationships so that I could work towards this YouTube dream because I idolized fame and money. And I realized that now, they did a recent survey of the U.S., the number one most desired job in the world right now is being a YouTuber. And I know all these people are pursuing this career, and they also struggle with workaholism, that they have this idea of this like perfect future that they want, and they neglect their relationships to get there, thinking that betting that future is going to be better where they're at, but they don't even know it.
Yeah.
And so this message, I feel, is super like, it's super true to me, and I know I've talked to enough people to know it's true to them, and so it's like I guess I kind of I say it's like a solution to workaholism. It's a solution to work that detriments relationships. It's putting relationships back in number one, and I think a lot of people need it, but right now it's just like me and my message, and I don't necessarily think it needs to. Like I want the brand to continue when I die or whatever. And this is all like super long to say. I've looked for people to work with, and what I realize is that I have a bunch of creator friends, I have a bunch of entrepreneur friends, and it's so hard to find people to work with because everyone wants to be number one in their brand, including myself. I want to be number one. I want to lead the brand. I'm not going to act like I don't have that.
Yeah.
But just by like letting go of you being number one, you can go so much further with someone else. And that's why I find that dynamic interesting of like working with Jeff, and it's like I'm seeing all these videos of you on jets and he's speaking and you're there, and like it's funny because it's like you're in the same place as him. You're doing the same things. You're living the lifestyle.
Yeah.
But and that's something I'm trying to like do is like, how can I sacrifice my vision and my dreams so that I can share the moment with more people, which is just like, I don't know, just like an interesting
I get you. I mean, I like
thought.
Like going with David the first time,
Yeah.
I had to let go of my business because I started my own social media marketing business for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
I ran it by myself before getting picked up by Dave. And I mean, I was getting flown out to Hawaii. I was supposed to go to Thailand with Dan Fleischman before that.
Oh, wow.
Like I was starting to get involved, and it was finally starting to pick up. I started doing all these like different kind of videos for big YouTubers, entertainers in LA, marketing commercials for water bottle companies. Like I started getting a lot under my portfolio. And after that, when I got the opportunity with Dave, I remember emailing them and I was like, they're looking for someone in-house. And I was like, I wanted to contract Dave under my company. And they're like, sorry, but we're looking for someone in-house. And I had to ask myself the question is, will working with this guy excel me to what my end goal is?
Yeah.
Right? To be a better entrepreneur, basically become the most I can be.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy is entrepreneurship 101. Like I will learn all that I need to learn about being a successful entrepreneur through working with this guy. So it was like, I had to drop my ego, let go of the pride, because it was like, this was my baby. Like I've been working on this company like freaking day and night, trying to figure out everything from the ground up, you know? And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to drop it and start doing it for this person.
Yeah.
It's hard. But I had to ask myself, is this going to excel me to where I want to be? And it was a total yes. So I was like, okay. Like, so when I got in there, I still didn't treat it as a job. I mean, I treated it as a mentorship.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy, I mean, I would have about 3 minutes with him every single morning. After his Instagram live, he would do an Instagram live every single morning, and I had questions ready in my notes for the second he hopped off the live. And I knew I had like maybe 30 to 45 seconds before someone walked through the door.
Yeah.
So I would start asking him questions every single day. And I just started learning from him. And I think that's how we started to build a relationship over time. But
Creating your own luck right there.
yeah, but I mean, that question of like, you know, putting yourself sideways, like same thing. I mean, I could be using all my skills and talents to try to build my brand instead. But I mean, it's like, I think, I want to say it's Zig Ziglar who said it, but it's one of the old guys who said, get enough people what they want, you know, help enough people to achieve what they want, and eventually you'll get what you want.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. Actually, one, you said it once in a podcast clip or something. You said like everyone wants to be the best, but only one person can be the best, but everyone can be better,
Right.
which was interesting. But I mean, there's the classic quote of like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But this guy, Elliot Bisnow, he runs a company called Summit Series, where he brings all these entrepreneurs to a speaking networking event on like a cruise ship, mountain. He was so successful that him and his 4 co-founders bought Powder Mountain, the world's largest private ski resort, at 25. They bought a mountain for $40 million. And through a cold email and friends, he actually sent me to walk across Spain this past summer.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of weird mentorship, like super blessed opportunity. But he had a quote that really kind of hit me home on the idea that we're discussing, which is, this guy, dude, he's had Warren Buffett speak at his events. He's had Kendrick Lamar attend his events. And someone asked him, what is the best part about being an entrepreneur? This guy's had every cool experience. He's met everyone you can imagine. And his answer, the best part about being an entrepreneur, having co-founders. Because he said getting to share the moments with someone else makes it worth it. And I look at my friends building Creator Camp, and they're just like blowing up, and they're having so much fun doing it. And that was kind of when I had the revelation where it's like, I think everyone kind of pictures like my brand, my building, and right now it is my brand. I'm working with this guy, Joey, shout out Joey. But it's like, let's take it to the extreme. If I had 10 million monthly listeners and it was just me, and it was like I had all the money in the house in the world, would I rather be there? Or would I rather be at 1/10 of that? But along the way, it was just the most fun because I was just sharing every moment with my co-founders and entrepreneurs, and I sacrificed my vision and my brand and money, and I sacrificed all that stuff, but I was just enjoying the journey so much more. That's like a question I ask myself, and it's really difficult because part of that is people aren't going to want to work with you or build anything with you until you build something for yourself. So it's like, it's kind of just a weird.
I think it's an interesting topic on the side of, because in my head, when you say that, it's like, would I rather have the money or the relationships kind of thing?
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, why not both? You know?
I know both.
Like,
yeah.
You can still have the abundance mindset and say, okay, how can I get there with that?
Yeah.
Because there is a part of it, and I still struggle with it, is where the workaholism, like, I'll get very anxious if I don't work, like, you know, and a lot of times, like, as much as I say family and relationships, I put them up there, a lot of times I do decide to just put my head down and work more, and so that's something I still struggle with. But I think it was, do you know Rick Warren?
Heard the name, but no.
Famous pastor. He has a book called Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah.
And in that book, I was on a plane ride back from, I don't know from where, but I was like, Jeff and I were speaking, or he was speaking somewhere, and I was on the plane ride back, and I was listening to it. And I'm just in the plane, and it just hit me in the face where he's like, your relationship's got to come first.
Yeah.
Relationship first and foremost to God, and then after that, your loved ones, and then from there, whatever it is that you're working on, your mission, go on. And because it was always very hard to put aside, because for me, when I look at my values and I put my faith first, it's like my work is like tied to my faith kind of thing. So it's like, how do I find this balance of back and forth? But really my job is to, you know, share what I do have for those around me. I mean, it's very simple when you break it down to what we're supposed to do. It's just like very simple. Treat others how you want to be treated. You know, to be able to help those in need. If you see someone, like, it's just this simple stuff, but once you tie it into work and everything else, it just gets so hard because you want to, like, everyone wants to do something big. You know, everyone wants to do something big, and you can, and I think that's an important part of it, to believe on that side too, but not to think it's a failure if it's not. You know, I mean, even when I spoke on that stage, I was freaking out. Like, I'm not kidding. My heart was just pumping. I'm in the back. My hands are all sweaty. And I've spoken in front of people many times, but that was the biggest stage that I got. And the people I was following up were like the best speakers in the world. So I'm freaking out. Wild. And eventually I had to ask myself one thing. I was like, if I'm literally sitting in the back of the room while John Gordon's finishing his speech. And I was just like, even if I only impact one person, and I'm looking at the back of the heads of everybody, I'm like, even if just one person, I'm like, is that enough for me? And I had to sit there and ask myself that question, and I was like, yes, you know, even if it's one person that helps them change their trajectory. Same thing for the podcast. Like, if it's one person who listens to this, like, is that enough? And it's just it's a yes.
Yeah, dude, you're sparking so many so many thoughts. I mean, even biblically, it says there's literally a parable in the Bible. It says if a farmer has 100 sheep and one goes missing, will he not leave the 99 and go find the one?
Mm-hmm.
It's like to care that much that you would leave and go find the one.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the best books in the world. Tim Ferriss' The 4-Hour Workweek.
Yep.
He said if you write it, he wrote it to one person.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning of the books, it always says to my mom, to my dad. When you write from that perspective of one person, even with the Soul Wealth Mission, the podcast, I have this image of a kid in college. It essentially is me, but I give him a name, like it's not me, and like I picture him because it's like
You're almost that person that you needed.
yeah, and it's like how do I help that one person? And I know even speakers will say like they speak as if they're speaking to one person, and that's a interesting message. Going back to the like relationships and what you heard from that pastor, something I think about a lot is like the deathbed perspective. There's a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. She was like a hospice nurse, and she worked with these people as they were dying, and she would just ask them, what are your regrets? And the second most common regret, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Because, and that hit me. I think the other thing that hit me was just picturing like when I was in my grind modes, like just going so hard, it's so easy to like recount that story to someone and be like, or even recount it to yourself, and you're like, dude, I know that I deserve to be where I'm going because like I'm working on Saturdays, I'm working all day, like and I'm doing this and this and this, and in what you're doing is you're living in the future, and you're saying, like, I'm so happy because I'm investing now so I can be somewhere great in the future. But if you died in that moment, would you be happy with how you spent the last week of your life if you just worked so hard and you just, and there's a balance because it's like, you could say the same thing and be like, well, then why don't you just never work and spend all your time with people? But I think that's where it goes back even to what you said in the beginning with having the purpose and the vision. Because our job, career, or calling, it's like if you have a job and then you're just working and your relationships and your impact are separate. You're working for someone. If you have a career, maybe you're making money and then you utilize that money to help others. But if you have a calling, then hopefully your source of money is helping others and it's making others. And I think the biggest one for me that I like failed so hard at is I would use all my like good positive energy for my work, and then when I come home to like my girlfriend or the people around me, I'd kind of be like, not like mad or mean, but just give them the leftovers, the weak energy. And that was like where I was like, why am I doing this? Like your job doesn't love you, people love you. So why would I give and I think that now though, I feel so like, I love this work so much that like, I'll go home and I'll like have a better energy, more happiness around the people. It
fuels you.
Yeah, it fuels you. And, that's interesting. You did talk about a time where half your company quit, you broke up with your girlfriend, couldn't pay rent, you had to move in, you were living in your car. You said, tough times don't last, tough people do. Can you take me back through that moment and what you learned?
So I wasn't living in my car, but I had to move back home. I had to sell the car, but I mean, that was some of my like lower, I mean, I've had a lot of things just not go my way in the past, and just tough upbringing. With immigrant parents, money was always an issue. They went to 2 bankruptcies, separated, and when I was in high school, so there was just so much that went on. I moved probably 30 times as a kid. Like,
wow. There
was just a lot that I had to go through, and I used to struggle a lot with even talking about it. Because I put it away, and I would just not pay attention to it, not give it any of the emotion or anything. But then it would start to manifest itself in different ways later as I started to grow older, as I faced adversity in different areas. You start to learn about yourself a lot, even in that lowest time. That time is, I think, what brought me closest to my faith, and that was in this past a year ago, literally around the same time. And I used to say, I mean, I had never been so low, but I also had never felt so close to God before that, until that lowest point. Kobe has a saying where he's on an interview and some guys ask him, like, did you always have faith that you make it? And he's like, oh, absolutely. And he's like, have you always had that kind of faith? And he's like, when you're too weak to walk and you fall to your knees and God picks you and the cross up, he's like, that's when you know. He's like, that's when you have that faith. And for me, that was that time where I felt like way too weak. Like I felt like I threw my all into all this and everything, and this didn't go my way. That person didn't do what I'd like. It was just so much blame in that moment, until you kind of realize that you're just making everything about you. And once you turn it back to other people, it's like, damn, like you start to just kind of sit with it and realize what your flaws are, where you can get better, and it doesn't matter what you can or can't change. You just know what has to change, and you know, in that moment, it's kind of when I had to decide, you know, I can make this something that's happening for me, or something that's happening to me. I can play the victim, or I can use this and leverage it, you know, as fuel. And that's where I started to learn how to use these adversities, these challenges as fuel to try to break through that next glass ceiling.
That it's so interesting how I've listened to so many testimonies, how many people come to Christ in their suffering and how little people come to Christ in their success. And the people who know Christ, once they know him, they will then share the successes with him. But it's weird. I never hear stories of people coming to, it's always in the suffering. And a lot of people will ask, like, why it's like two things. When suffering happens in relation to God, people go one or two ways. People go your way, where they go, like, I have nothing else, like, I'm open to God. Or people will go, I'm suffering, like, if God was real, like, why would I be suffering? And they'll question God for it. And I always think it's interesting is that, like, I listen to a lot of apologetics. It's like, we don't know suffering. We don't know exactly why it happens to us. We can't we know that, like, if you take suffering, you can learn from it and you can grow from it. But we don't really understand why it's, like,
happening while it's happening
into our world. But some people will use suffering and they'll say, like, God, they'll use it as an argument against God's love. They'll say, oh, because they're suffering, God must not love me. But we know, as a Christian, you should know especially that that's not true, because the greatest act of love ever was Jesus dying for you. It's an act of suffering. So while we don't understand why suffering happens, we know that suffering and love are not mutually exclusive. In fact, in terms of Christianity, they're one. The suffering was the love. And so that's something interesting I think about too.
It is. It's very deep on the side of, like while you're going through suffering, to still have that faith, I think is where the character is built. Because one, it's easy to say, you know, God is great, I love everything, and he's a good God, until things don't go your way, and you're like, what? Like, why are you doing this to me? You know? It's very easy to say that during good times, but in bad times to still say, I trust you, even though I have no clue where you're leading this. I completely trust you. I think that's just depositing faith. And so I don't know how it ties in or why or what, but
it is interesting.
I mean, all we can do is control what we can, which is how we use it. I think when I look at it, because I think there is a deep feeling of that suffering, and kind of realizing why you're going through that suffering, thinking of the suffering he did go through for us. And it does relate. It's kind of in a way like, I think it's just the understanding, the perspective. Because if you think about it, they always say, like, you know, if you think about how much your parents love you, or how much you would love your child, like, imagine someone that loves you 10 times more or 100 times more than that you could ever even imagine, right? Would they want you to purposely go through suffering? Like, if you took a candy away from a kid, they might feel like they're suffering. But if you're like, no, like, trust me, like, you'll get cavities and it's not good for you, right? Then from that perspective, it's like, oh, he's protecting you. So in a way, whenever I have gone through that, I look at it as there's some way where I'm being protected and promoted right now. I just don't understand it right now, but there's some way that I am being protected and promoted, and he's looking out for me. Maybe it was somebody around that circle that was going to lead me down, or it wasn't the right leadership or the right career, or maybe I was too into the money at that time and he needed me to see, and, what is he trying to teach me through this? But I think there's a correlation there for sure.
Yeah, the loving father. I think about that example a lot. The same analogy, but with my dog. I'm like my dog wants to eat this chocolate so bad. And in his world, he can't possibly understand why I would not give him the chocolate. He's like, I like it. And you're eating some. Why can't? But it's like, well, no, I know it's poison to you. There's a Bible verse that says, since he himself has gone through suffering, he's able to help us when we are being tested.
He had to know to understand what us humans are going through,
Yeah, you want to hear my favorite analogy ever?
Yes.
It's by Tim Keller. He's my favorite pastor in apologetics. And he said, if Hamlet is a character, I don't know, in Shakespeare or some play. He said, if Hamlet wanted, Shakespeare's the writer of Hamlet. He said, if Hamlet wanted to meet Shakespeare, how could he do it? It's impossible. Hamlet cannot meet Shakespeare because Shakespeare created the play. Hamlet is a character in the play. They cannot meet each other. There's only one way that Hamlet can meet Shakespeare is if Shakespeare writes himself into a play. If he makes himself a character in his own play, then Hamlet can meet Shakespeare.
Right.
So conversely, there was an author who wrote this series of books about a detective. And in the books, the detective was lonely. And for the first 3 books, he was lonely. He was a very successful detective. And then in the 4th book, she wrote a love interest to fall in love with the detective. And people who've studied her life believe that she wrote herself in the book, that she was the love interest. And it's like when you think about this analogy, so Tim Keller says that he thinks the way God set up the world was that it was very similar to if Shakespeare met Hamlet. It's like, when we think about Jesus, it is kind of weird to imagine, like, why did God become a man? Why did he have to become a man? It's like, well, he died for his sins. That's what we think about. But it's like, what does that even mean? And he says, he loved us so much, he loved his story so much that he wrote himself into the story. Because we can't, it's like, if I write a book, and the characters in the book, they can't possibly understand me as an author. But if I write myself into the book, then they can meet me in their world in a context they understand. It's like God loved us so much that he wrote himself into the story. And that was the only way we could truly understand him, is if he himself became one of us and he wrote himself into the story. And that was an analogy that, like, I was like, wow, that's like next level. I don't think I gave it justice explaining it. Like, he explains it so much better, but it's wild to think about it. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It really, really helps the growth of the podcast. Dropping a like or a comment on YouTube, and let's get back into the conversation. Something I think about a lot is identity versus discipline, which is that, like I don't drink alcohol. Discipline is choosing not to do something even when you want to do it. So, like, a discipline example of this is, like, I want to drink alcohol. My friends invite me to go partying and I want to party, but because I have discipline, I choose not to. And now, but I say, because I follow all these brain doctors that tell me the bad health effects of alcohol, and my brother's a super bad alcoholic, and like the Bible says to be sober-minded, there's really nothing in it for me. So now it's not like when my friends invite me to go do something like that, and it doesn't take discipline because I don't want to do it. It's just my identity. It's who I am. So I think about that concept a lot of, like, how do I do stuff because it's my identity rather than just, like, having discipline. You talked about something called raising your identity, and I was so curious because I'm obsessed with discipline versus identity. What does raising your identity look like?
Yeah, I mean, identity is really at the core of it. It's the beliefs that you hold closest to you about yourself. It's where you hold your worthiness. It's where you hold your deservingness. It's where you hold a lot of those things, like you said. It became an identity. I don't really look at it as discipline versus identity. I look at it as discipline until identity. Because when you need discipline, in order to change habits.
Yeah.
Right? To get yourself out of the scene of drinking or doing anything that just doesn't serve you. Right? It's same thing, identity of someone who is, with nicotine. Let's say they're a smoker, right? It's like the difference between the identity and discipline is, I can't smoke, or I don't smoke, right? Identity is I don't smoke.
Yeah.
The discipline is I can't, right? I can't do it. I have to, because you're trying to choose this better person that you're trying to become. But as that, it goes into the brain, right? As the neural pathways get stronger and stronger, because every time you do something and you repeat it, that neural pathway gets stronger every single time, right? That you do it. And so that's how you build habits. The same way break habits is by not lighting up that neural pathway and choosing differently. And so that other decision that you keep repeating or keep making, the one to not drink alcohol, that becomes a habit. Right? So once it becomes a habit and it gets, ingrained into your subconscious where it's unconscious, and your unconscious competency is, I don't drink, I don't smoke. And then that's where it becomes part of your identity, right? Or working out, it can be the same exact thing. I need to work out. I need to work out for my health and this and that. But once it gets part of your actual unconscious competency, it's a thing that it's a different, I need to go work out versus I need to work out to feel okay.
Yeah.
Like if I don't work out this morning, I know I'm not going to bring my best for this and that and everything else, right? It starts to change. So I think it's discipline until it becomes an identity. But raising your identity, for me, that one specifically is where Ed helped me a lot. And I had another buddy, one of my best friends, that really brought this to my awareness. It was just the language I was using. There's a really good book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And it's really the language you use with yourself, the deservingness, the worthiness, how you speak to yourself. Because a lot of us, if you spoke to other people, if you spoke to your friends the way you speak to yourself in your head, how many of them would still be your friend? And that was a question I had to answer. I'm like, damn, because I'm always my biggest critic. I'm really tough at myself in my head. And I used to beat up on myself, and that does not help with identity, right? Like the worthiness though, and the identity too, Ed always talks about it as raising your identity. Like you could be running at a 70-degree identity, right? But a lot of the times when we try to raise our identity, you start doing the non-drinking, you start getting big guests, right? Your dream guests, like, I don't know, you're just doing everything you can at 7 days a week, running and gunning. And you're like, wow, this is awesome. You heat up to like a 90, 95 degree. Well, wherever your thermostat, your internal thermostat is, if it's always set to a 70 degree, it'll cool back that room down. Imagine a thermostat in a house. If it's set to 70 degrees and it gets to 90 degrees in there, it's going to turn on and cool it back down. So unless you raise your internal thermostat of what you think you're worthy of or what you think you deserve, you're not going to get to that point of deserving and worthiness of, you know what, I am worthy enough to attract over $1 million in the perfect way at the right time. I am worthy enough to have one of the number one podcasts in the world. It's that deservingness and worthiness where you start to expect, and this goes into like the Psychology of Winning, which is a book I'm actually listening to right now too. It's a really good one. But it's you start to expect the best. Why wouldn't you? Anything other than the best, anything other than that, sure, it might not go your way, and then you'll have to deal with it in a better way and learn how to react to that, learn how to learn and grow from it. But why would you expect anything less than the best? I mean, it's because we don't feel worthy. Like, oh, you know what, like, if you get one of the biggest guests, you're like, oh, I don't want to waste too much of your time. We'll only go 30 minutes, even though I go like an hour and a half. Or we just don't feel worthy of it sometimes. Or, even for me, sometimes I have to check myself on my identity. A lot of the biggest entrepreneurs get imposter syndrome, where they're like, I'm hanging out with rooms with like, one day I'm with Gary Vee, the next day I'm with Richard Branson, the next day I'm with like Tim Grover or Drew Brees, or like different people. I'm like, oh my gosh, like these people are legends, or I was on a helicopter yesterday. Monday I leave for New York for a whole week to go and do a bunch of TV shows with Jeff. Like those kinds of things I used to look at and be like, oh, that was the dream life. That'd be like, oh, I get to fly around. Like even my first time on a plane, I was like 20 something, like until it was the first time I was on a plane. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like I remember going to Hawaii for my first trip, my first time on a plane. I went and did video work for free just to go on the trip. And so part of that stuff is starting to feel the worthiness and deservingness, because if you don't raise that internal thermostat, you'll always cool yourself back down to what you think you're worthy of. And then you'll always put yourself into those same results, those same path, the same habits, right? And you'll start to self-sabotage and bring yourself back down.
You explained that really elegantly. Let me repeat back to you so the audience has some actuals. So I understand the thermostat thing. Are you saying the best way to raise your internal thermostat is the way you speak to yourself?
That's the place to start.
The place to start is changing the way you speak to yourself, taking up habits, and expecting the best. There's one thing you said, like with the 30-minute meeting, like when you interview bigger people. I mean, I definitely have had moments like that. What has helped you with that? Like where you, when you feel unworthy of someone's time or like, and I know it's bad because you're almost like, it's like in your head, you justify it as like they're on a different level. So like I'm being respectful by like only taking up this such time. But I know it's even bad just from a personal perspective, because you're like manifesting your unworthiness. You're like saying,
you're putting yourself down.
I'm a 30-minute man. Everyone else he interviews is a 2-hour guy, but I'm a 30-minute man. Is there anything that you've done that's helped you specifically with that? Like,
I think my faith grounds me in that one, because no other person, there's not one person in the world, whether it's the homeless guy in the street or the top CEO in the world, no human is different than any other. That is the baseline for all of us. There's no, we have trillions of dollars in this industry, and that go around to different, causes and helps, but you can't remake a human from the ground up. What you could throw all the money at the world in the world right now. You cannot recreate what we are. You know, like same thing with, you might think you put a Rolex on and you're like, oh, dude, that's way too nice for me. Like, I can't see myself spending this much on a watch or ever doing this. You're already putting yourself down because you're thinking that piece of material is worth more than you are. Like that, you should, in the identity side, be like, I don't know if that thing's worth being on my wrist, you know, because I know who made me, I know who created me, and I know what is inside me. That's where mine really got grounded. And it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, it's easier said than done.
But those are the things that I have to tell myself in those moments, like going up after John Gordon. You know, or I'm like, dude, am I even worthy of getting on this stage? Like 90% of the people in the room had bigger businesses or more money than me, but I'm the one speaking in front of them. But I still had to go up there and just know who I am.
That is very, very valuable to hear. Like I'm just hearing it now and I'm like, wow, that's really good. So I'm excited for the audience.
I hope so.
I do think of that a little bit with the Soul Wealth brand. Like part of the reason where I always say like not to measure success by money, possessions, or achievements is not that I'm not trying to avoid those things. I don't think they're bad, but it's that like, if right now where I'm at, if I were to measure my success by those things, and I went into these rooms that you're talking about, I would have to feel unworthy. By that metric of success, I would have to feel unworthy. But if I measure by relationships and memories, I know that I have really good relationships. I know I have people calling me every day, people texting me, people inviting me to events. Like I know that I could travel to almost all the states in the U.S. and I would have a couch to sleep on. And I'm like, dude, there's probably people
you're wealthy
in these rooms that don't have that. And for me, it's like a way to like justify that I have value to give. It's like I really do have relationship. Like you said something, you can't give what you don't have. And I know that I have value in relationships and that I can teach it to people. But I think to take it even one step further is that you might be someone who doesn't have money and you don't have relationships and you're lonely, and maybe you moved here from Hong Kong and you're just learning English and you don't have any friends. But that's where it goes, like faith takes it a step further, because faith says you don't get your value from money, possessions, achievements. You don't get it from your status or relationship with other people. You give it because you're a loved son of God. And if you're a loved son of God, you always have something that you can add to people's lives, which is you can tell them the good news. And so it's like it really does equal everyone out there, and the more that was like something that was hard for me, which is like, I think that entrepreneurship and faith work together. And I think that science and faith work together. I think that there's select people who try to make them seem like mutual, more so with science and faith.
That's how I was.
But there was something with that I always struggle with, which is this quote, you're the five people of...
Some of the five people.
The quote, you're the sum of the five people you surround yourself most with, which I was obsessed with that quote. And I loved that quote. And it changed my life because I surround myself with successful people and their success became my success. But the issue was when I lived super hard by that quote, I started to think, and this was my naivety, that I started to see like people I hung out with as worthy and unworthy. I was like, these people are successful, I need to be with them. These people aren't successful, I shouldn't be with them. Which is, from a general sense, that's like a good mindset. But from a faith sense, it can quickly lead to pride and quickly say like,
oh yeah.
And that was something that I struggled with, was like, I started to like judge my hangouts, judge the people like, oh, who's worthy, who's unworthy. And then, and the Bible says over and over and over again, like you are not better than anyone. It says, help the homeless, help the poor, spend time. So many heroes of the Bible were broke, poor, being martyred, and it's like, and so that was like another thing for soul wealth, is like, it's not just soul wealth for how I measure success, but it's like looking at other people. I shouldn't be looking at just at those things. And that's like, you had the I think you got it from David Meltzer, which was like the student mentality. Act like you know everything and you'll learn nothing. Act like you know nothing and you'll learn everything.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to money, I had to really understand my relationship to it, especially with faith, because the Bible all over the place, don't love money, don't love money. The love of money is where I started to see the bad thing. If money is your number one, it's a bad thing. Money can be a servant. For me, and I read it through the Bible, money can be a servant, but it's not, you cannot love money. You cannot put money first, because in that sense, in that same vein, it's hard to figure out, okay, well, how do I get myself to the worthiness to feel like I can attract $1 million to do all this? And you start to fight back and forth with it. But I mean, earning money is not a bad thing, I mean, even Jesus was a carpenter for 33 years before, like he didn't do it for free, right? He had his craft that he did for most of his life before starting his actual journey.
I've never thought about that. That's really interesting.
Right? So he had his own craft. Like earning money is not a bad thing. And I had to really, because I felt guilty. I felt guilty if I didn't give some of it away, or if I didn't have some non-profit purpose to it. I felt guilty for receiving, because it was just like, I had to understand that I am worthy of receiving the blessings that he puts in my way. If he gave me a check for $1 million tomorrow, would I feel worthy of it? Would I still struggle with it? Even if I thought it was coming from him, So I think there's a lot between that relationship, because at the end of it, even the Bible says, where you store your riches, right? Are you storing your riches in eternity, or are you storing them here on earth? Because they'll turn to dust if you store them here. I'm not worried about, I want to do a lot, the parts of the road to 100 million, not only to impact over 100 million lives, to be able to make over $100 million a year and give away over $100 million in my lifetime. I think money is a tool. It gives you options, right? It gives you options, and Dave says it, to shop for what you want. You just have to know what you want, right? I mean, there's just parts of it that just go into that relationship to understand that from abundance perspective too, right? If I go out and buy a Porsche, right, in my head I might be thinking, dude, I could have, with this same money, you know what that could do in a third world country, right? $100,000 for this car. But you also got to think of it from the abundance side of like, why can't I do both? Why can't I help people and be able to live and inspire people to live a life where it's not about the money? I might like the Porsche just because I'm a big car guy. I don't want to flash it. I might not ever post it or show it to anyone. But what if it's something that I want, and that it was just, it was a goal of mine? But there's always that middle ground, and it's a different relationship with everyone. But I think understanding that relationship to money, that it's not a bad thing to earn money. It is a tool. It can serve you in different ways. but the love of money. If the reason you wake up, because the reason I wake up is not for a Porsche.
Yeah.
You know, that does not motivate me. That does not even inspire me. I mean, really, like, it's exciting. Like, if you buy a Porsche, it'd be exciting for a couple weeks. And then after that, it might be like, okay, this is just my car that gets me from place A to place B. But what wakes me up is that calling side of things, to know that by the end of my life, I want to do and accomplish as much as I can. For me, it comes to the talents of making the most of what I've been given, right? How can I go and multiply what I've been given? Even, like, for me, I look at it as a story of immigrant parents coming broke, living all these dead-end jobs. Like, I look at it as that's all part of the story. He's using all that to lift me up so that he can say this, he came from this, even in the face of all this stuff. Look what he was able to do by just having faith.
Yeah, there's a lot you said there. I think people think very one-dimensionally, where it's like, I could get the Porsche or I could help 100 kids in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, well, maybe you get the Porsche, maybe you get a Rolex, and maybe you're in these rooms with 100 millionaires, and they don't know God, and they respect you because you have a Porsche and a Rolex, and then you teach that person about God, and then that person helps 1 million kids in Africa.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so one-dimensional, and even in the Bible, it says, Hebrews 13:5, it says, be satisfied with what you have, don't love money, for God has said, I will never leave you, I will never abandon you. And I think about the talents, where he gives the guy the 1 talent, the 5 talents, the 10 talents. I believe my pastor broke that down once, like what a talent actually was. I think it was about 1 talent was 1 year's wages, which was about 20,000 in gold standards, and that 20,000 would be accounted to back in the Bible's time. So essentially, like, the guy who had 5 talents was like, he was like what would be like a mega millionaire. And it said the guy who had 5 talents made 5 more. The guy who had 2 talents made 2 more. When they got to heaven, he said, well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done, my good and faithful servant. It was the guy who, and this is the part about that story that's always crazy, it's the guy who has the least who buries it, and God's disappointed with him because he didn't have the faith to go and make, it wasn't about the 2 versus the 5, or the 5 versus the 10, or whoever has whatever. It says, be satisfied with what you have. But it was that those people were willing to take what they were given and to multiply and give it back to God. But the other guy lived in fear, that he was scared. He didn't have that faith. He just wanted to hide it. And
he had the faith just in the wrong things, right?
Yeah.
He had the faith in the money that if he buried it and saved it, that, you know, that would be the best thing to preserve that talent, that gold, right? Like, I look at it the same way. Like, it's just what you put your faith into, you know, and same thing. It's the scarcity versus abundance, you know. When you have less of it, it seems even more scarce. Yeah. But, it's just what you put your faith into.
It's a little interesting. I think, like, when people think of money as an idol, they think of rich people, or they think of people. But, dude, money is an idol just as much to rich people as it is to poor people, because, like, and even me, like, I don't have that much money right now, and sometimes it's like I feel like I need money, not like, oh, abundance, I'm gonna get $1 million, but it's like the same person who's at like $100 million and they're like, I need $1 billion, and like they live for money, is the same person who's in debt, who says like, I need money. Like, it's like, you're both serving money in different ways. It's not the amount, it's just like they said, the position in your heart. Do you wake up and serve it? And that's just interesting.
And you only really know that by, like, even when the Bible says, show me where your heart is and I'll show you where you store your treasures. Yeah. Right? Where's your heart at? If your heart is all around just the money itself, once you get the money too, what's going to push you after that? Yeah. And what's enough? You know, there's never... Yeah. This is the same thing. Once you get to $1 million, you want 100 million. Once you get 100 million, you want $1 billion. And I don't think that's a bad thing to always want more and do more. But it's just like, what are you using that money for? Because I know people with exotic cars that will flash them in the way that, like, come make money with me, and this is how I do it, and this is how they monetize their brand. And I know people that use that and say, because of my obedience to God and everything else, it's given me the opportunities to make this money and make dreams come true and be able to give back. And, you know, like David Meltzer, he used to say on his 50th birthday, instead of throwing himself a big party and buying himself a Ferrari, he donated that same money that would have bought him a Ferrari and bought 2 community centers in Africa.
Wow.
You know, and he's like, that serves me way more than the Ferrari would have ever. And it's just, that's how it is. And he used to always tell me too, he's like, you want to know what $1 million really feels like? He's like, give it away. He's like, you'll know what it feels like when you give it away.
Oh, wow.
You know, and giving away $100 for me, like if I give it to somebody, like if I find someone just in need and I give them $100, $200, like that emotionally will charge me up so much more than spending $100 on myself. Like I would, because when it comes to that, I'm like, I don't need it. I don't need it. But when it's somebody that's in need and I come in contact with them and I just feel the calling, I'm like, I have enough to pay my bills. I have enough to do this and save money and do this. And why not give it to them? You know, they are in need. And that giving away that money feels so much better.
Wow.
But nothing, and it's not attached to the love of the $100 that I'm giving away. It's how you're serving and making those people feel, right? If it's some dude living in his car, like the smile you might get from him and the appreciation and just what it did for him, you know, that $100, you might get $100 today and you're like, oh, cool, that might last a week, you know, like that's like four dinners, 5 days, you know, like, you know, you might go eat, but
it's like
for that person, it might mean the world. It might mean the difference between getting their children some Christmas presents or not. You know, it's that little difference that you never know that you could be making. And that's where I use and look at money as a tool. How can I give it away? How can I use it to serve me and my family and serve all those around us to help, you know, give to the poor, to help. I mean, if you want to spread your message and you get hired to speak, let's say you got hired to speak all over the world and all you were doing is getting hired to share your testimony of faith. Costs money to fly around, costs money for the gas to go around. You might need money to go and do that serve, right? And that's how I look at it as even when, you know, Jesus' disciples, he would leave the little bags of money or the talents for different people when, you know, they needed certain foods or certain things, like, or people around them would somehow give it to them. They would find it in different ways where there's stories of, I forgot his name, but there's one of the guys that was very wealthy and left them a bag full of like gold coins. And, you know, there's just different ways where it'll come in. You don't even expect it. You know, but I don't have I don't have that direct connection to money. And it felt weird because at first it was from the undeservingness. I used to ask Meltzer, like, I'm like, is it weird that I'm not excited about the money? And he looked at me and he's like, no. He's like, that just means you're doing it for the right reasons. But even going deeper into it, I had to find that relationship with money to not feel guilty about earning money and making money, especially when it's your calling, right? If somebody wants to pay you, if somebody came on and was like, yo, let me pay you 10 grand to come on your podcast, you'd almost be like, dude, you don't have to, like, no, like, just let me share your story. Like, that's where it's, you know, it's hard to receive sometimes. But when you get to the point of, I heard this the other day, there's 3 levels of believing, right? There's the believers that, you know, believe in God and Jesus Christ and the Bible, and there's the believing believers where they believe that for themselves, and then there's the receiving believers who believe that they themselves will receive the blessings that God has for them. And it's just expecting to receive blessings. It's the same kind of thing of where I want to do my best, be my best in everything that I can do with everything that I've been given, and I know everything will come back around. Right? If I do and I'm obedient to what I feel he's calling me to do, like the obedience to God is what's brought me that feeling of safety and sense of worthiness.
Rain. Dude, that's beautiful.
Dude, he's bringing down the rain for us. You see that?
So, you know, it's my first podcast in the rain. One of my favorite Bible verses, Mark 11:23-24, says, a lot of Christians are like turned off by this idea of manifesting, and I don't know if it's just the word.
Asking you shall receive.
I don't know if it's just the word or what it is, but when referring to the idea that your thoughts become reality, I always say, bro, Jesus is not against that. He took it to a level that we don't even take it to, because like us humans, we say, oh, I want a job. Like if I think about this job enough, or I think about this career, then I can achieve it. But after Jesus makes this tree wither, and he says, Mark 11:23, truly I tell you, you can say to this mountain, may you be lifted up and thrown into the sea. He says, and it will happen, but only if you believe it will happen, have no doubt in your heart. He said that if you believed it and you had no doubt in your heart, you could throw a mountain into the sea. He says, therefore I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe that you have received it, it will be yours. So that I always think about that too. And it's so funny because I'm at a level of faith where when anything bad happens to me, I literally just always think there's some sort of opportunity behind it.
Exactly.
Like I'm just like, oh, it's so random. Like I'll lose money, or it will start raining during my podcast, and I'll be like, dude, maybe because it started raining, this clip will hit harder on Instagram.
Maybe.
And God was like, he was planning it before I even knew. Or like, maybe because I lost money, I'm going to make a decision that God's going to have his hand. And it's just like, it's like I really, and I will like go in and out of this. I'm not always like at this level, but I really just think like when you have a certain level of faith, it just makes you so confident in your failures. I'll wrap this up soon. Lorraine.
Hey, I don't want your camera to go out.
Yeah, I'll be watching that red light.
Yeah. But no, I mean.
Wait, 1 second. Sorry, camera. I believe I do have a plan. Hey. I mean, you don't have to, but that would be very nice. I'm just gonna do one more question and get to my outro.
All right.
Shout out Haley.
Shout out Haley.
She's holding a camera, umbrella above the camera right now. I did want to ask you something because I found it very interesting. It was a very brief thing you mentioned, which was people listen to their phone more than they listen to their thoughts, to their brain. Could you elaborate on that and like how people don't listen to their thoughts anymore?
I think it's I just think it's a sense of like not so much that they don't listen to their thoughts, but what thoughts they're listening to.
Yeah.
And what they choose to listen to. Same thing, it's just the identity and the self-talk. It's huge because you might think I'm the worst, I'm undeserving, this is terrible, but it's like God is always the whispers and the ego is always loud and arrogant, right?
Yeah.
So the loud things of like, oh dude, like this guy in your head, you might be thinking this guy hates this because we're doing a podcast in the rain now, and he's gonna be like, I want to get out of here and finish this up soon. But the whisper's like, no, like use this, like this is good.
Moment.
You know, use this moment and leverage the opportunity because you never know. But yeah, I think they listen to outside sources more than they do what they believe. You know, and it's because that identity hasn't been so, I guess, just moved in. Like they haven't worked on the identity enough to believe that, you know, your podcast, you might think it's the best thing in the world. One person that, you know, it might be your family or somebody close to you might tell you something bad about it. Like, come on, dude, you know how many podcasts are out there right now?
Yeah.
And now you choose to believe them or what the world says, you know, versus what you choose to believe, what your God's putting you here for. And it's really just same thing, putting your faith, is you're putting your faith in the other people or putting it into what you think God has put you here to do, you know? So it's really just that.
It's interesting, like the idea, like how we were talking about, like, we were talking about how your habits become your identity once it's conditioned enough in your subconscious, but it's like everyone, most people use their phone every single day. It's like the habit that we all have. And based on what content you consume, those will become your thoughts, your conditioned thoughts. So if you let it, your phone, actually, I wouldn't even say if you let it, to some degree, what you consume will become your identity. So it's so important that you consume.
Well, here's the thing, the eyes are it's the vehicle into the soul.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly consuming things that are not going to be good for you or things that waste time or don't put yourself near God's purpose and what you believe you should be doing, and you're busy watching people more than living your own life, you get stuck in what other people are doing. And you get so caught up in that where you just have this anxiousness about doing anything, really. And the phone, same thing. You look at your phone an average of 144 times a day. You look at your home screen. So for anyone watching, what I did too is I'll be very intentional with something I'm trying to work on with my identity or my beliefs or a habit I'm trying to build. I'll put it on my wallpaper so that every time I see that, it reminds me of what I'm supposed to know or what I'm supposed to think about. Or even my tattoos are a lot about that a lot of times. Or just what I believe. And like even this one on my wrist I see the most, it's the dove with the olive branch in its mouth, right? And for me, it's a very biblical verse. It symbolizes a lot about peace and forgiveness and lovingness. And, that's really what ties me back in, just a reminder. It's just triggers that start to put you on the right path, starts to make you focus on the right things. Because I'll finish with this too, is the reticular activating system. This goes into the brain, is something that filters out what your subconscious believes to be important to it, right? So if you go out and you get let's say you get a red Mercedes tomorrow. Next thing you know, you'll notice every single red Mercedes on the road. That new car, whatever you just got, you start to see it everywhere. Why? Because now it's become of importance to you. So your reticular activating system will filter in what's important to you, because that filters all data points when your sight, smell, touch, and what you feel. Like all data points are all coming in at the same time. If we didn't have our RAS or the reticular activating system, we would go crazy, ballistic, because there's just way too much data coming in. So it filters out what's important to us. So the more you start to trigger and remind yourself what's important, the more you'll start to see through that lens, right? If you start to trigger yourself to see opportunity and abundance, you start to see that more in the world. You go around the world with that lens versus the lens of scarcity, the lens of undeservingness, unworthiness. So yeah, that's a big one.
Wow, that's good. Can you also explain the butterfly effect?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the video.
The clip.
Well, this was from a book, The 1 Minute Millionaire. Mark Victor Hansen wrote it, and he says if you focus on the first 15% of the process, hyper focus on just the first 15%, then 85% you'll have 85% chance of getting your desired outcome, right? On just simply focusing on that first 15%. It's actually there's another rule name for it, but that's how he explains it, as you just focus on that first 15%, right? And really for me, that's the intention. Like within my life is what is my intention for this day, for the next day, for my life, for what I'm trying to pursue. If I can just hyper focus on that first part, there's an 85% chance I'm going to get what I want, right? Same thing as serving others. Serve others, help them get what they want, and eventually you will get what you want, right? If I just focus on that first 15% of my intention to what I'm trying to do, there's 85% chance I'm going to eventually get there, or somehow, like I'm at this point, it'd be naive of me to think that my plan and everything I think is going to go exactly how I want it to. 100% of my plan is going to do exactly what I want it to. Like it's changed enough for me to say now, I'm okay if it changes. I know where I want to go to and who I want to be and what I want to represent. And however I get there is fine. It's fine with me. I'm willing to be flexible with what God's plan is for me versus my plan.
Wow, that's good. Well, I feel like I have to ask you, since this is like your whole brand, but brief explanation. You have it tattooed, create your own luck. What does that mean other than just create your own luck?
I mean, it means you have to make opportunity. Because even when you think about the law of attraction, the last 6 letters of attraction is action. So if you sit on your couch and you meditate about a Ferrari every day, you're not just going to open your eyes and magically see a Ferrari, or you're going to magically open your eyes and you're going to lose all that weight or become the person you want to be. You actually have to take action, and you have to create your own luck. I used to send 30 DMs a day to every single person I wanted to work from or learn from, and eventually that opened the door of opportunity, right? And it's the same thing. Seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open. It's all the same things, but you can't give up after 3 knocks. I prayed for 2 weeks on this. Like, no, go have faith, go create your own luck. If you really think that you're gonna be the best business person or whatever, you're going to tell everyone about that business. You're going to, if you think that having faith, same thing, I always use fishing too. If you put in 50 rods in the water versus 1 rod in the water, what are the chances that you're going to catch a fish? Right? Why not put 50? Why not create your own luck? People are looking at you like you're lucky. All of a sudden, all these things are falling in your lap. No, I created that luck. I went out and with faith, went and created opportunity, and so and it's always the same thing when they see luck is when preparation meets opportunity. A lot of times in that creating your own luck, having to do the numbers, having to do the extra work and everything else, you do find that preparation that leads to the opportunity. I truly believe same thing with Jeff and everything else. I was being prepared for this opportunity to take on this role with him, to quarterback his brand, to be able to travel with him, to be able to help him with speaker one day, website stuff the other day, managing everything on the brand side, back end, just to have the confidence to even do it as well, or the identity to be able to be in that position and own that role. Everything has prepared me for this role, even I am now, and who knows, this is preparing me for wherever life takes me.
That's good. I write down all my favorite quotes in notes app on my phone, and I wrote one of your quotes down, which I love so much. It says, work like it's up to you, pray like it's up to God. So good. I just wanted to include that for the audience.
Well, it's funny because this tattoo says make your own luck, and this tattoo is a whole eternity knot. So it's work like it's up to you, pray like it's up to God.
Oh wow, that's good, bro. That's amazing. I ask this question as my outro to every question. It's to engineer people to think from the perspective of soul wealth, which is, when you die, what do you want people to say about you?
I think it's simple for me, and it does tie back to the Bible, is just to be a good man, to be a good man to those around me, to be a good husband, father, son, brother, employee, leader, whatever it is, that guy, he was a good man. He always helped when he could. He always showed up and tried to be his best always, and he was a good man. He meant well, and and he did good things for this world while he was here.
Well, Andrew, it's been a good time. And thank you for sitting in the rain with me, bro.
Dude, of course.
I'm hoping these clips will hit hard. We'll get some deep music on the screenshots. I do need to take a Polaroid too.
Let's do it.
But I'll wrap that up here.
Thanks for having me, man.